to tell you about a company, Heritage Clothing Line in Accra. So Heritage produces its own clothes. It has its own designs, and it has its own brand that it's supposed to put forward there. But then Heritage advertises for its competitors. So with all of its radio jingles, the commercials it runs on television, and any post that it makes on Facebook, Instagram, think about it. All it does is telling its potential customers to buy from their competitors. Really ridiculous. And if maybe you are thinking now that perhaps it's a business strategy, it's a marketing strategy, no, it's not. As a matter of fact, they're struggling to meet their annual sales target. They barely ever hit 20% of the target they set for themselves. But then with the little resources that they do have, they keep on advertising for their competitors. Everybody in the company is so much disturbed. From the shareholders, the management, employees, everybody in that company is disturbed and they want to turn the situation around. This afternoon, if I were to ask you to give me a solution to go give back to this company in Accra, I know it's very obvious and so easy. They should just stop advertising for other people and focus on their own product. But it's not that simple because Heritage doesn't even know that it is advertising for other companies. It doesn't know. It invests so much money in that, but it doesn't know that it's actually advertising for other people. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not here to tell you about this unbelievable story of a non-existing company. Yeah, it's a lie. Forget it. But what I want to bring to us here is a reality of the spirit of that story. The consuming pattern of our continent, Africa. How we have our own products, how we have our own brand and our own designs, but then we keep on patronizing that of other people. And if there is any one single thing that I think we could really credit our leaders for, it's been adding their voices to this whole narrative and campaign on patronizing made in African products. Well, maybe they have incentives. I mean, the more you sell, the more maybe your pay is also determined. But whatever the reason may be, the point is that they've always added their voice to it. And in fact, in places like Nigeria, for instance, there are quotas on certain amounts of goods that you can import. So rice, for instance, because Nigeria produces rice, it only allows a certain level of rice to be imported. But then the point is that no matter how hard these campaigns are done, or the quotas are put on these products, the people who are going to consume these products still have a certain taste and preference. So much so that they still desire for perfumed rice that is imported from somewhere else apart from Nigeria. But even if we were to say, okay, fine, let us get rice from elsewhere, in Kenya, for instance, Kenya imports so much rice from outside the continent, but then next door Tanzania produces so much rice. So it's a little bit of a dicey situation, and I think over time we've tried to explain why the situation is so. For most people, it's been that, well, Africans don't like African products, or two, African products are really inferior. And that has been a narrative that has been around for long. But I don't believe any of these two is a situation. I believe it is so because our lifestyle is modeled in such a way that the products we produce on the continent here does not support that particular type of lifestyle. Let me give you an example. After school, I want to be an investment banker. No matter how much I like wearing this particular shirt, I can never go to the office with this. I mean, even the Google workers are today suiting up. So if I'm to go to the market to go buy something, I obviously will go in for a suit or something like that. But to better understand the situation more, some few weeks ago, I went out to interview a number of people, 75 Africans from over 25 countries, Cape Verde, Burundi, Togo, Nigeria, 25 countries. And what I wanted to know from these people were their preference pattern and their consumption pattern with regards to the goods that they did engage. So for example, I'll ask one person, what do you like? And then the second question will be, what do you buy? And in doing this, I picked two elements of culture, food and clothes. So my first question was, look, assuming there were two buckets of food, we had African foods and non-African foods. So think of the paps, think of the fufu, the ugali, and now think of the burgers, the fries, and pizza and what have you that you have from the non-African bucket. The first question was, what is the origination of your best bucket of food? And out of these people that I did interview through this survey, 82% of them confirmed that they really did like African foods. And it really sounded so good to hear. So then I moved on to the second question. I'm like, okay, when you go to the market and you're going to buy food, you have to take money out of your pocket to buy something from a restaurant, for instance. What do you normally buy? African foods, non-African foods. And then again, I had just 31% of the same group of people who earlier on gave me an 82% preference for African foods. So just 31% of them who confirmed that they're more likely to buy African foods. So then you realize that even though we have more people preferring African foods, when it comes to the buying of it, lesser people bought it. So I'm like, fine, let us move to the second aspect of culture, the clothes we wear. And there's on those same assumptions that there were two categories of clothes. African clothes, the agbada, the smock, kaftan, and then Western clothes or non-African clothes, the suits, the crop tops. I won't say more. Which one do you really like? To this question, I just had 34 people confirming that they liked African clothes. And it was really sad. But what was more sad was when I went on to ask, okay, if you are going to buy clothes for yourself, which one are you more likely to buy? Just 11% of people from this same group of people confirmed that they'll buy African clothes. So then you realize that there is a mismatch between what we buy and then what we think we like. And if these two elements are elements of measuring culture, there are metrics that we can accept to measure culture, for instance, that is food and clothing, then you realize that the African culture really exists in theory, but in practice is non-existent. There are two different sets of things here. We think there is that thing, we think that we like African clothes, we like African foods, but then when it comes to the buying of it, it's different. And we must not really feel guilty about this. And that is the reason I'm here today. It is so because our lifestyles have been modern again after a very Western line, so much so that our African products have no much use for us. Because even though I'm talking about this thing, like I said initially, if I'm going to the office or I have to go to the office, I can't go to the office in this. And so it is like this, or people buying more of non-African products. It's not because they don't like the African products. It's not because the African products are not good, but it is simply because the products of African origin really do not support their current lifestyle. It is like trying to sell a piece of chicken meal to a vegetarian. He has no use for it, and he's not going to buy it, no matter how much you inspire him. And that is the reason why no matter how much our leaders, for instance, go out there and tell people to buy African products, it's still not going to fly through the roof. And it reminds me of one thing that Napoleon Bonaparte, a quote from Napoleon Bonaparte. He says that true leadership is the definition of reality and the inspiration of hope. But what we do with urging people, for instance, to go buy made in African products is just an inspiration of hope. Telling people, for instance, to go buy a product so that it's going to be of benefit to the continent. But then we refuse to really engage the reality of it, that people really do not need these products as much. So what I want to do today here is to, first of all, reason how did we get to the point where our lifestyles are so much modeled after Western culture? And to do that, it led me to habit formation. You see these two handsome young men you see there, Papa and Nana, they're my nephews. And I saw these guys when they were born in 2014, tiny human beings, so tiny. They didn't have any taste, they didn't have any preference, they didn't have any choice. Nothing at all. They were just there. But in the last few months I spent in Ghana during my internship, whenever I visited these guys, Papa will always ask for a specific type of chocolate, and Nana will always ask for a specific type of ginger biscuit. And it led me to question, how did these guys get to the point where they decided that they like this particular product and that particular product? Exposure. The kind of sweets that have been exposed to them by their mothers, fathers, siblings, and the people around them. It is out of the bucket of that exposure that they finally decide that we like A, B, and C. So, if you are exposing them, for instance, at that age, with regards to sweets, to, for instance, a chocolate that is imported from Switzerland, for instance, then, in he deciding on what he likes, he's more likely to choose one of those things. Papa, as you see there, has a very well-tailored three-piece suit. Whenever they're going out, he's going out with his mom, for instance, they'll dress him in this suit, and they go out. Eventually, what we are telling Papa, for instance, is that if he really wants to look so nice, or he really wants to look so good for a very good occasion, then he is to think three-piece suit. If you are to give him money today to go to the market, to go buy something for himself, because he's been exposed to this type of lifestyle and he's always looked good in it, he's more likely to go in for those line of products. And that is the situation. But to move it away from these young men to the bigger picture, China. Once upon a time, when talking about very, advanced countries, you were not going to think about China because at that time it was a region that was really struggling with its population, for instance. But you know what? China has been able to protect its territory so much that it has crafted the kind of lifestyle that people live in China after the Chinese culture, so much that it's been able to send it out. Today, if you are to go into a restaurant, not only are you going to have access to the Western cutlery, but then you are more likely to also get the Chinese chopsticks if you want it. Because they capitalize on it themselves so much that today they've been able to send it out there. That is an example of people who are making sure that they live their lives after their culture. And then making other people also live it. When Facebook came out, Twitter, Instagram, I think there was this craze for it. Everybody wanted to be on one of them. What's happening in China is that there is no Facebook in China, there's no Instagram in China, there's no YouTube or Google in China. But then the Chinese government didn't leave them like that. What it did was that it did copycat apps that function just like Facebook and all of these other apps. So they have the Youku, they have the Buy, and they have so many things. Now, to make the experience even better, what they did was that all of these apps that I've mentioned, they put them on one platform called the WeChat. On WeChat, you have your Chinese version of Facebook, your Chinese version of Instagram, all the social media apps are there. You are able to do online payments on WeChat, and you're basically able to live your life on WeChat. Today, there are 400 million people on WeChat as we speak. Now, imagine what corporate China can do with the data of 400 million people in one place. Imagine how it can be able to develop products that really suits the lifestyle of these people because they have the data of these people. And this is a deliberate attempt that has been pursued by a government to ensure that it is putting itself out there. Not just going after what is produced, not just going after what is being done by other people. Because the true fact is that the more people produce or the more people consume a particular product, well, wealth is created. But the question is that who benefits from this wealth that is created? So today, I have a very simple suggestion. Now, what if, while Papa and Nana are 3 years old today, what if we decide that we're going to expose them to products that are of African origin? What if we decide that when it is that special day, and we really want them to have a very good self-confidence about themselves, we're going to dress them in an agbada instead of in a suit? What if we decide that we are deliberately going to call these guys by their African names and not what if? Because this is the whole point. We just cannot leave these situations to chance. We hear of narratives of how Africa is rising. We hear of narratives of how the population is going up. The question is that if we really want to create jobs for people, for instance, we may want to reason first of all on the kind of people we are creating that jobs for and what jobs are actually going to be in and what they are going to be producing. Is it African products, or are we still going to create wealth for other people? By 2050, Africa arguably is going to be the leading consumer in the market. The question I want to throw to us today is very simple. When Africa gets to that point, and it ever gets to be the leading market consumer, ever, if that is possible, by 2050, Nana and Papa will be 40 years old. They'll be CEOs. Yeah, I know those guys are smart. And they'll be buying so much on the market. What do we want them to be buying? And who do we want them to be creating value for while they are at it? Do we want them to continue the trajectory we are on today, where we buy so much, we spend so much, but then we create little value for the continent? Or do we want to put them in a situation where they are buying, satisfying their needs, and then also creating immense value for the continent? Some say we are sitting on a time bomb, or we could be sitting on a time bomb. I think we are sitting on a gold mine. And we need to make sure that we get the maximum value out of it. But whatever the situation is, even more than making sure that we expose the next generation to African-tailored products and then also model their lifestyle after African-tailored products, the question today is that what can you and I in this audience today start doing? There's so much that we can do. I have personally decided to always go by my surname, Adu-Poku. The only reason I'm still carrying the name Richard, well, that's another story. What can you do? There is so much. So the decision is still in our hands. We are going to be buying so much from the market. Who do we want to be creating the value for? We have to deliberately decide to use our culture, leverage on our culture to create so much value for ourselves. We cannot continue to be that company that advertises for other people. The company that puts the product of other people out there while itself struggles to meet its own sales target. We cannot continue to be a radical. We cannot continue not to really appreciate what we do have here because we have no need for them. If we want the vegetarian to buy our chicken meal, then let us make sure that that person doesn't even become a vegetarian in the first place. Thank you.